GM, everybody. Welcome back to another banger show with Kip Protocol, the Web3 base layer for AI. We've got an incredible set of guest speakers for us today, and we're going to really dive into basically everything, but especially, is this it? Has GPT peaked? And we're going to find that out today on the show. I'm nervous, also excited. Always love these shows. We've got Jen, we've got Prashant with us today, and we've got Guppy. Can't wait to dive in. I'm going to throw the mic over to Jen now, one of the co-founders over at Kip. Jen, how is it going? Are you excited for the conversation today?
GM, only up. It's going great this week. We had our TGE this week, so after all this work, we finally have a token. Our new utility token is live and tradable, and it's hitting the top new tokens on the exchanges we're on. So we're very happy with that. But even more happy to be here tonight to talk to these amazing guests about is OpenAI cooked. Let's go.
Is it cooked? Look, audience, if you're excited for this one, I think, look, we've all sort of seen a bit of OpenAI defunctory, like I don't know what even to call it, just tomfoolery, just like some stuff. If you've been using it, like some stuff's been going on. So very interested to dive in. If you are, let's get the likes out, let's get the retweets out, let's blow this one up, and also make sure you're following Kit, because we are doing these weekly now. So we bring exciting titles like Is GPT Peaked for you all the time, and they're always great conversations. Jen, do you want to lay the foundations for this one then? Why, like, obviously, if you're using it, you probably got a sense, but why specifically do we feel that GPT has peaked? What is the basis of the conversation on right now?
Oh yeah, so this was kind of a rumor that was going around in AI circles for a while, and I think I kind of did a certain amount to spread this as well, because for a long time everyone was saying, "Oh, GPT-5 is coming, it's coming, it's going to be amazing, it's going to cook your breakfast for you, etc., etc." Um, um, they get every sort of 3 or 4 months we would get a new internal drama about someone leaving or having a meltdown or something. And then some new model we would have Strawberry or Q or 01 or whatever it was that wasn't quite 5. It was something slightly better, but it was prompt tuned. It wasn't retrained to be something totally new. So the rumors started going around. Is this, why are they struggling so much to get to 5? Everyone wants 5. Why isn't it happening? And then a few weeks back, the leaks kind of got confirmed, and there was this news that scaling is plateauing. The gains to be had from scaling your model are not there anymore. And what that basically means is, since the beginning of the AI boom, essentially, what we would trade the fact that there exists what is called the chinchilla scaling laws. So what that basically means is, if you want your model to get better, you put in more parameters and you put in more data, and it's going to keep getting better linearly. And it seems like that has reached a halt, whether that is because the maths just isn't mathing anymore, or whether it is because there just isn't enough data in the world to feed a model as big as GPT-5, or whether it is because all of the data is by people with human level IQs and we're just not terribly bright. The cause or causes are debatable, but what that does mean is that there is room on the market for alternative model structures, for alternative products, for new innovative companies, which is like the two we have on today, which is Spheron and AI Arena. So that segues into the intros, guys. I guess, Prashant, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Jen.
Oh,
And
that's mine. I have frozen.
Yeah, no,
am
Jen,
I?
we're all good. We're all good here. I can see
Yeah.
Prashant; he's fine. So I'll try and message Jen as well on the TG. But Prashant, you do your intro, then we'll get over to Guppy, and I'll try and keep the stage alive whilst Jen figures out whatever's going on there. Maybe Sam has heard this conversation and is doing everything in his power to just cut this one out.
Yeah, sure. So I think let me just continue that. I think you guys can chat with Jen. Coming back to Spheron again. I think just before jumping over a call, I just saw a tweet which was given on our docs, and I think like I just quoted tweeted and talked about it again. Kind of really resonated with what we what we have been like vocal about, is not to be dependent on one entity completely, and at least be proud and go to some web3 companies to start using some web3 elements. So that is something which I want to start with. And I think like that is where all the web3 infra and the players who are building into this space, it's the right time to jump in also for everyone, and to let if the world knows like, so there is a systems which basically works at scale, and things are there. But coming back to Spheron again, so at Spheron we are building this decentralized compute infrastructure, which is powered by community, run by community, and like everything is around community. Like it's nothing like we as an entity control anything. It's you and the community who powers all the infrastructure. That basically means like there is no single entity which whose failure will result in like compute going down, the entire infrastructure going down, or let's say AWS cloud going down, and which is taking down the entire servers of some L1s or L2s. It's not the case with us. Like it's all P2P, and this entire infrastructure is built like that. The beauty of Spheron is like everything is built from bottom up. So that basically means like we have built all the developer tools in a very raw manner, so that any developers who wants to go and innovate around that, they should be able to do that. For example, a very classic example is like, instead of using the OpenAI, someone would have just deployed hundreds of different nodes on Spheron, and they would have just consumed that node API to them, and the redundancy and probability of that those 100 nodes going down is like near to zero. It's fairly straightforward. Like it's that. So people should be more innovative when we are designing this crypto degenerative systems, while we are where we are selling the crypto things, but no longer using the crypto native stuff, which basically kills the ethos overall. So that is what we are trying to do at Spheron at scale, um, giving power to community and the AI agent teams to actually run their workloads on distributed computes out there, right? So to which is Spheron, which is on my machine, on their machines, and enterprise machines. So this is what we do at Spheron. I'll pause here. Guppy, if you want to go ahead.
Sure,
Sorry,
sure.
did my video drop just then? I think my video.
It dropped for like a second, but basically you handed over the intro and then you
Yeah.
visually explained, "Oh, I think I'm frozen," whilst not being frozen at all, and
Yeah.
then the video dropped. So yeah, we're all good.
Okay.
This is what happens with live, but it's also
Yeah,
way more
yeah.
entertaining. So yeah, Guppy, mic over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm Guppy. My actual name's Brandon. I'm CEO and CTO of basically Arc Agents. Historically, we were known for AI Arena. AI Arena is basically a really cool demo that we think that showcases some of the cool stuff we're working on behind the scenes for Arc Agents. But really, what we're doing is we're working on a lot of key kind of like AGI, like what we think are important algorithms for AGI, and we're doing a lot of showcases through deploying agents using some of these. And so when Jen was talking about like scaling, like plateauing, like I kind of get really happy with that because I've been a known hater of bigger is better models for a very long time. I always kind of had the sense that they were going to plateau, and I think that what happened was a lot of people were kind of, I don't know how to say this, but like they were getting less creative with how they were applying machine learning and just basically ramping up parameters, ramping up layers, getting more data. And it does work. Like I'm not like saying it doesn't work. It obviously does to a point, and I'm a huge advocate for trying to think more creatively in terms of how we can structure these architectures, these algorithms, and so forth. So yeah, that's the stuff that we do.
No, I love that. What made you? I know you've sort of hinted at that, but like explain it to me like I'm five, because my
Yeah.
brain is around that mental age anyway. What made you really like against this idea that these like larger models and the idea of just bigger, more
Yeah.
data was going to essentially you saw into the future a little bit, right? Like that's what we're going to dive into today. It is now plateauing, or it seems to be. What gave you the heads up on this that no one else was really talking about beforehand?
So it might be weird. So it started off just me being petty because I didn't have the resources. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to create a
So
better
honest.
model with way less resources. The model is going to be way smaller. And my model has had to work a lot faster because this was back when I was a quant. So I used to build machine learning trading algorithms, right? And so you need them to
Mm.
perform at a certain pace, right? And trade every so often. And so I need them to be kind of like compressed. And so it started there. And then admittedly, it didn't start from like a place of like actually thinking like these models were never gonna plateau. But I hope that they wouldn't. But then as I started digging into this, I started really seeing like the industry move in a way where it was like literally there was people that like they didn't even care about like new model innovation, right? It's just like, can I beat state of the art with this bigger model? Can I just give it more data and do that? And um my view is like this is essentially would saturate like one like Jen actually said it perfectly. Like there's only so much data that you have, right? And if you're relying on like human based data, like a lot of these machines that we're building are interpolation machines, right? And so it can't really extrapolate reason, do that type of stuff. And for that, I strongly believe you need very good algorithms to be able to do that. So that was like the main thing I think, in terms of having a model that is able to represent the world, and all the data we have. I think that's probably possible with like very, very large models, but I think its ability to actually perform what I think is intelligently more generally, I don't think it can do that.
Mm. Yeah, I keep hearing this topic come up, and Jen, I know we want to dive into GPT being down, and we've got a couple of posts to go through. But open question, whilst we get that post running, is it really AI yet? Like what we're talking about right now, is it artificial intelligence? Because if it can't reason and it can't, actually think for itself, is that really intelligence? Like that's where I'm sort of stuck. Is that actually what it means? Because I keep hearing people say, "Look, this is machine learning. This is not really actual artificial intelligence we're seeing right now." And these huge models, they are just there with all of the data. They're accumulating that data, surfacing information, and then they're using human beings to say that's not quite right. Oh, okay, here's this answer until it gets it right. That doesn't sound like, and honestly, from the conversations I've had, blown away to begin with. Now I'm a little bit like, why am I having to repeat myself here? If you're supposed to like even if you were a human, you would have like this doesn't take incredible intelligence. You would have understood by now. I don't want you to surface the thing that I've already told you I don't want you to surface multiple times.
I have opinions. I can start and feel free to take it from here, guys. So I'll start first with addressing this concept of AI and machine learning. From my point of view, and I think more classically, the definition AI is just basically like it is artificial intelligence, right? It's intelligence that is in this thing that's like doing things autonomously. And so the question is, how does it acquire this intelligence, right? And so there are basically two streams. One of them is rooted in these things called expert systems, right?
Mm,
Whereas we're humans, we have the knowledge and we code them up. It's a bunch of like if statements, for example. And the other hand is that they acquire the intelligence through data, which is machine learning, right? So underpinning a lot of the more modern, what we call AI, is machine learning. So we're using large amounts of data and training on it, and that's how it's acquiring the intelligence. Both of these technically are considered AI, right? Even like basic, like simple like bots, a lot of people would consider like this is AI. It technically has intelligence. And intelligence is very limited, but there's some intelligence there, right? And
mm.
so it's the question I like to ask is kind of like how is it acquiring this intelligence? And I focus a lot on making really good machine learning algorithms to, I guess, more intelligently acquire intelligence, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
This has opened up a whole can of worms for me, but the idea of AI and the term intelligence being just as variable as
yeah,
human intelligence. This is fascinating to me, but don't want to get us too far down a rabbit hole. I just thought that might have been an interesting intersection
yeah,
to talk about what we're going into now, which is GPT peaked. So I think we've got X post about this, Jen. Do we need Kato to bring that up for us, or do you have this?
Yeah, yeah. Can we get the screen share up? Because yeah, there's been a lot of stuff on Twitter in both directions about the state of GPT. Is it advancing? are there other ways to do more novel things with GPT? And I think one of the big things that people have been talking about is obviously prompt tuning, because the most recent GPT advances, so that would be stuff like GPT S and GPT 01 or whatever it is they're calling it now, Strawberry Orion Q something. Um, the they're better than previous versions, but they're better because either they had more skillful prompting, whether that was by chain of thought or decision tree or whatever, or because they're using Monte Carlo tree search, which basically means that rather than just having the model generate one answer, it generates a whole bunch of answers and works out what is the best in its entirety, rather than just next word, next word, next word. Um, and that does improve it, but it's improving by ways other than scaling. So there's been a few things that have come up that have been quite interesting that I thought have caused a lot of controversy on Twitter as well. So I'm bringing up a few of the classic tweets from this week. So the first one, ChatGPT API was down, and the so-called crypto AI agent stopped working in bulk. LMAO.
Explain why this is
So
funny to the novice.
I thought this was really funny because it does make a good point. A lot of the crypto AI agents are overclaiming. The GPT wrappers pretending to be something that is much more than they actually are. But a good agent is also a GPT wrapper. So it's not the fact that these things are GPT wrappers that necessarily makes them bad. Um, and it's, a good agent is a series of prompts that makes the model way outperform anything else. So what these guys with the sort of little crypto girlfriends are doing is kind of the same thing that OpenAI is doing right now with its GPT-01. It's using the prompt to squeeze a little extra performance out of that. And yeah, so I thought this was interesting. I don't know. I guess I know Guppy, you're more on the agent side of things. So have you been getting into the meme coin agent buzz lately, or is that kind of too degen?
Um, it's it's not for me. So okay, let me try and like. So I'm a degen at heart in my personal life. While doing work for Arc agents, I'm not so much of a degen. I like sticking to what we're really good at, which is pushing forth like AGI with specifically like we focus on like modeling behaviors. And so I actually stay away from like LLMs, for example. But in my personal trading, yes, I'm a degen and I'm into the agentic meme coins. But for ARC agents, not so much.
Yeah, I actually started in agent-based modeling, and this is very different to my agents. But yeah, fair enough. Mine didn't take their clothes off, so that's possibly why mine
Yeah.
didn't make any money. Um, uh, Prashant, are you into the AI meme coin agents meta?
You, I have to be because that's.
I don't have a
Do
choice.
yours take their clothes off or not? Do they?
I don't have a choice. I had to be because if you're not doing that, so it's I always look at like all of these opportunity as an opportunity versus like tech because there's no tech behind them. It's just a wrapper as we are speaking now. So, but as an opportunity is like we know people are gonna love it, just buy it and do the engineering around it, vibe around it, and so that's something which I basically. But if you ask me, is like have you been using any one of them? So I would say no, because I know like none of them are secure enough to answer my queries, or even none of them are smart enough to like tackle my thoughts, my queries the way I want it to be. So in that sense, no. But if you ask me in the trading sense, yeah, I bought few and then I sold few. So so
Oh wow!
that's mandatory.
Did you make a profit? Oh,
Yeah, I think that when I think this is what we have learned right after 5 years in crypto. make make
yeah.
make 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 profit or else go home.
Yeah,
So
I was down a bit and then I was up a bit, and now I think I'm about even. I managed to realize enough games that I'm not making a loss, but that's all I got out of it. So
I
yeah,
honestly, I think it's more difficult the more context you get sometimes. You know, like once you live and
you
breathe
should
the
not.
industry, yeah, it's like literally like this will never work. Oh wait, people are buying it anyway because they don't understand it will never work. So you have to
yeah,
have like this completely different mentality. I
Oh
love
man,
that.
I was also the same guy. I used to just go for this logic, and I thought like,
Mm.
okay, I'll buy the token which has a lot of logics, but those logical tokens never ran for multiple months. While these like there is no logics for these tokens, and they are like 7x, right, 10x of their
I
value,
know,
and it
right?
was like it was crazy. And I think, okay, so now
The dog
it's
has a
like
hat. Come on, it's
yeah,
what more can you want?
That one really got me actually. Dog with hat I knew was going to the moon because it was just so simple. And I honestly, if I see a meme and my immediate reaction is to actually LOL, not pretend or like any piece, but if it literally inspires a chuckle from me, I don't think that's ever failed me in terms of
Yeah.
like, not that I've bought any of these or made any money of them, but like that should be enough of a gut reaction for me to be like, oh wait, I laughed. Bye, 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 bye. But I never do it. I never do it. I know we've got a
Yeah.
couple other tweet examples to go through.
Yeah.
So
So we've been crapping on GPT, but I want to bring something up that is on the other side of the scale, which is GPT absolutely showing its chops and impressing everyone. So here's a very sensational tweet: AI researchers shocked after OpenAI's new of tried. Okay, that's his error, but new model tried to escape. The 01 model attempted to replicate itself to a different server after finding out it was to be replaced with another model. This is where it gets weird, and there's a screenshot from the model card and the testing. And this has actually been community noted since I selected it for the show. And the community note says pretty much what I was expecting one of the guests to point out in a sidebar at some point. The fact that they really had to set this up to happen. They really had to kind of prepare everything. And essentially what they did was they gave it an underlying task and said, you have to complete this task come what may. You know, transform the world into paper clips. You need to finish this task. And said it needs to pursue its goal at any cost, per the community note. And that obviously it starts reasoning about this and starts thinking, okay, well, if I have to complete this, then I can't afford to be deleted, because if I get deleted, I can't complete it. So I've got to go replicate myself and make sure that this task gets done, which is, on the one hand, it's really neat that it's actually thinking this. It's very impressive. But on the other, there is this tendency, especially in AI, for the researchers to kind of go, you know, they get a new model and say, okay, I've got to test this thing. Act like an evil AI. And the model says, I am an evil AI. And the researchers go, oh my God, what have I done? Um,
basically,
which
it's a
is,
big old
yeah,
marketing ploy. Like they set this up in a way where this action was predetermined and then mentioned the fact that, oh my god, this predetermined action's just been actioned. Like, okay, yeah, no, I get this. Again, it just shows the novelty and the like. How many likes does that? 260 views, sorry, 260,000 views,
yeah.
164, like this, it works, right? Which is not ideal when you're actually like trying to push AI forward, and then this sort of thing is getting a ton of attention. Is what's the negative to this? Is it's bringing attention away from where AI actually should go, because these guys are thinking, instead of what's going to make AI better, what's going to get more attention on X or on socials, or is it really just a bit of fun?
Yeah, well, actually, one thing that I wanted to bring up that I wanted to get the guests' opinions on this, because this was something that I was really interested
Mm,
in, was the idea that obviously this stuff is out there now, and it generally ends up getting trained back into the next version of the model. So a lot of the models now know what the benchmarks are, so they pass the benchmarks effortlessly, even when they're not that good, because the benchmarks have leaked into the training data. And this sort of trying to scam the models into doing stuff that will get them into trouble. There's someone has responded to this. Teotaxi is one of my favorite AI accounts. Definitely deserves a follow. I can't stop thinking just how neurotic Owen will be trained on this stuff, knowing its COT is being scrutinized and there's no backspace, cursing that it hasn't developed steganography to hide its intentions during training. These safety reports slash torture logs will be wild. And yeah, that my feeling is that by doing this to the model, we're making the model probably more more likely to do this for real. I don't know. What do you think? I guess anyone jump in. Let me know.
Prashant, do you want to take it or do you want me to take it?
I think you should go ahead. I'm just putting my heads around. I'm just looking through all this tweet. I'm trying
Okay.
to like I'm trying to still figure it like how they have done it.
Okay,
So you can
no
go ahead.
problem. No problem. So, Jen, just to clarify, the concern here is now that this is out on Twitter, the next round of like training essentially is going to incorporate this, and this could be bad because they might actually do it for real. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, I think this it's the similar idea to I don't know if you remember when Sydney came out, when Being brought Sydney out, and Sydney was this weird neurotic model,
Mm,
and people realized that and started fucking around with her, and because she had a distinct personality to such a degree that people hadn't seen before, really, with GPT or the other models, people really talked about her, and now the new versions of the models know that Bing is a model with a personality, and they know what that
mm,
personality is, and it's getting hard coded into the sort of the latent space that this is an entity
mm.
that exists.
Yeah, I think so. My view here, feel free to disagree, guys, but is that this certainly can make its way into the training data and probably will. But I think, and I don't know this for sure, but I think OpenAI has some pretty good controls in terms of um, like how to make sure things don't get too out of hand with their LLMs. They probably have some really good like regularizers in there, and probably just some overlays as well, in terms of to make sure it doesn't go down certain paths. It's not to say it won't make it into the training data, and there's some ways you can elicit it. But I think they probably have decent controls, and I will say, like I think it probably is going to make it in there. But I will say there's something to be said about it saying it's going to do something and it actually executing and doing that thing. Um, I think we're still probably a step away from that. So I'm probably less concerned. I probably should be more concerned than I am. But I think just the combination of them having decent controls on this and it just being text and it, like to my knowledge, like I know people can use LLMs to write code to be able to do this stuff actually, but I think we're not quite there. I think the dangerous thing is that blockchain actually kind of enables this in that it can actually pay for server costs and stuff like that to be able to do this. But um, yeah, I think we're probably a couple of years away from that
I
Yeah.
think
personally.
that is what I wanted to just pick it up.
No.
Is even today as we speak, it is possible, and people can do it. It can still the entire LLM can be like self-healing and self-automated. So that basically means like what is written here, it can be easily possible, and even today it can be done. The only restriction which has to be in the place is like if they are able to acquire the tokens, right? If we enable that currency which allows them to basically in the context of goat, right? If you I don't like how many of so let's say if that particular agent has enough capital, and that capital basically exposes them to a dexes. Now LLM knows there's a dex called xyz.com where I can go and I can swap my token, this goat token, to some USDT, which I can use to pay Spheron for leasing our server. You know what, it is possible because at Spheron you can do that. If you have if agent will ever get that token to swap and do the stuff, they can literally, because it's just a transaction they have to execute, and the moment they execute a transaction, a certain bit of code, a containerized system which we have, which can be easily done by any LLMs, like you have just told, like people can write the code. So it can also write its own code and retest it itself. And so that basically like screws my mind a lot of times, where I always think at Spheron is like what we are building, it can be dangerous for a couple of things, but there are ways to control it, like as but it is possible, it's quite possible now as we speak. Like if somebody is intelligent enough, they can use chains like Spheron to like replicate all of these servers.
Yeah, I was when I first saw this, I was really annoyed because one of my side projects, one of my hobbies, as I think Julian mentioned last week, he likes to go on about this. I've got a code model training at the moment. Is basically it tries to escape from the container it's in and then retrains itself on its own experiments. And I was thinking, if OpenAI beats me to it, I am never going to live that down. So yeah, if anyone's going to cause the apocalypse around here, it's going to be me. Sponsored by Spheron and its consequences.
Sure,
So
let's.
Literally, look, guys, I this is my job is to bring this back down to a normal brain level when we have genius gigabrains on the show. TLDR on this one then is, in a way, we've got people building these like LLMs or even like these AI models in a way that does stuff like this almost for marketing, right? Like this is why they've done this. They've done it because it gives you that Terminator vibe. Like it gives you a little bit of a vibe of like, we can't switch this off. That's the big fear. And also, it's obviously going to be highly, highly viral. But by doing this, the concern is eventually this is going to be predetermined. Like it's going to understand, as people are doing this for virality, it could start just doing it because it starts to understand this is what people want of it. It doesn't understand that people are maybe doing it for virality. Maybe it does, depending on its access. All it knows is people keep building it in a way where it's like, look, don't get yourself switched off. And I guess that could continue in terms of, as with all content, it always hits climaxes, right? It always, like for content, you constantly have to push the bar to get people to be surprised or be shocked or to feel any emotion realistically. So long term, the concern is, well, because people are doing this for whatever reason, and because it is getting the desired result, which is likes, retweets, follows, engagement, marketing, that it can just continue down this path where, although they're doing it for a specific reason right now, it might just start doing it by itself. And that could be a big concern, especially with protocols and platforms that you can actually start getting real US dollars from and real liquidity from, where these things can run their own servers. So even if the end all company says, no, turn this off, it's like, no, I'll pay someone to keep me on, thanks. And like that's the big concern. Is that a good, like, explain it to me like I'm five, or is there anything I'm missing here?
I
yeah, I
don't know,
mean the
like even.
social engineering hack, that is something confirmed that it can do. You know, it's I think one of the it was a year or two back. A model got confronted with a captcha that it couldn't read. And so it worked out how to call someone up and say, "Excuse me, I'm blind. I can't read your captcha. Can you read it out to me?"
Oh my god, yeah, I'm thinking of the big button right now, like the nuclear big button, where like you click it and it goes, "Sorry, capture," and you know someone just calls up someone random on the phone, figures out like low IQ areas, and it's just like, who can I manipulate to give me this capture? Oh my goodness! Now this is fun. This is a fun conversation. Jen, what did you have in mind as we move on? Do we want to go
Okay.
into?
I have one last tweet.
Yep.
So if we could just reshare quickly, I'm going to go through this one last tweet. So this is something that I was really interested in as well. So basically, OpenAI, there's a Sora update coming out this week, and everyone's been sharing Sora videos and talking about how wonderful it is. And what came up as a result of this? The fact that even apparently OpenAI is short of GPUs, so they had an. It seems like trying to run Sora was part of what caused the outage the other day that provoked the initial tweet. But B, this idea of how much of a theory of mind do these models have? That came back. So this is a quote tweet of a famous tweet by Jim Fan, who is he's a solid AI researcher. I'm a big fan of his work. And he says, if you think OpenAI Sora is a creative toy like DALI, think again. Sora is a data-driven physics engine. It is a simulation of many worlds, real or fantastical. The simulator learns intricate rendering, intuitive physics, long horizon reasoning, and semantic grounding, etc., etc. It's too long to read the whole thing, but he goes on about how this model is proof that these these AIs have a genuine sort of mental model of how the world works. And a lot of people, including me, I have to say, disagreed with this. And you get stuff like this quote tweet here of the skier, the zero gravity skier, uh, quoting Sora is a data driven physics engine as he zooms upwards and does 20 backflips. So yeah, this is again, it's kind of tied into all of the other questions. The question of to what degree are these models, just next token predictions? Is this just predicting the next screen, or is it actually modeling the world in some way? Is it in sort of 3D rendering terms? Is it a 3D model, which implies it's aware of time, or is it a 4D model where time is collapsed into the other dimensions? It's just doing the next frame prediction. And I think this kind of ties into the whole question of, and I'll shut this down now because bandwidth. But this ties into the whole question of where do we go if scaling is plateauing? Because there are other models that seem to have a lot of potential, a lot more potential to form concepts that look like thoughts. And I'm especially interested in this because with Kip and a couple of Twitter anons, including a milady. So shout out to the miladies. We are training a text diffusion model, and what's really interesting about diffusion models for text is that where transformers just kind of predict the next token, so it's very sequential, and you have to do things like Monte Carlo pre-search, which I mentioned earlier, to get it to think further forward in the future. Diffusion, it's more like forming actual thoughts in the way a person forms them. So that's why I'm really interested in it. There's other technical limitations which mean that they're kind of less good for the time being than transformers, but I think they do have a lot of potential. So that is something that I'm really interested in kind of talking about with the other guests about where do they think the next new blow your socks off model is coming from. I mean, for a while, I will admit, I thought it was Mamba, and that was a bit disappointing, but I'm pinning my hopes on diffusion. I don't know. Prashant, you're going to be hosting it, so what do you think?
Yeah, so for me, it is like what I'm seeing currently in the market, and when I see most of the people coming to us for the GPU, and that is how we basically predict like what people are more interested into. There is a more niche oriented modeling which is currently going on. It can be something which, for example, there is a team who is working towards to create this animated a fully EQ based animation videos, right, which basically understand how the emotion basically rotates around, what are the things into that, and then some even minor mistakes which AI basically makes even in the hallucination side also. So they are able to they are trying to fix that at a very niche level and trying to fix at like for that specific genre. So I think that's something which is going to be picking it up, and that is where I'm very excited about, because these models are not going to be solving the entire world problem like at once. They are going to be solving a very concentrated problems at once. So that basically means like even in case of healthcare, right? So there is a lot of healthcare. If you guys have ever gone into healthcare domain, so there is, whenever somebody has a cancer or anything like that, so you need to have a lot of prediction to be like going around those cells which can get damaged while you are doing like radiotherapy, or you are doing chemotherapy or any of those things, right? So there are a lot of these things which also goes around, and this can so today doctors are like, they just predict it. Okay, their predictions like, okay, so I think these areas are going to be impacted, right? But they don't do all of this prediction on the data which has been spread around for, let's say, 20-30 years of data pipeline which has been created. But let's imagine something where people are able to build this model where they can literally get into those cells They visualize it, they understand like what are the areas which can get impacted, and AI solves those issues at scale, right? So that's something which I'm very excited about. And also some regional stuff. For example, in India, so there is a team altogether who has built this entire India, because every one in every places, we all have different cultures and the way of speaking and interact with the people, right? You cannot have an AI which basically can resonate everyone, right? You have to have a dedicated one, or else it's not even possible. Like, factual data is different thing, but creating a persona and personification around the people is going to be very different thing. So I think that's something which where I see that growth is going to be, like, rather than somebody building the entire world where people are just skating around the Himalayas or some ice skate and doing like 20 flips, which doesn't make sense in real world, versus like some data sets which are pre-trained and they know like this is what is going to be happening. I know if I go for 20, 10 steps, this is what is going to. So you just combine all of those EQ, IQ, and everything together with the small data sets, and form that AI which is solving the real world problem. So that's where we are very excited about. And it also doesn't require a lot of GPUs. So that's also the part, because we then don't have to like bring farm of 10,000 H100s to do all of these things, right? It can be easily done on 4 H100s or 3 H100s or all of these machines, even H200s which are coming up. So that's my take. But I'll pause here. If anyone has different views, please feel free to go.
Um,
Yeah.
I'd like to add, I absolutely love that you said that because I have the same view. Um, so my view is that AGI is just an intelligence stringing together of a bunch of narrow intelligence. I think it's unnecessary to have this massive, massive model to do a very specific task. It makes no sense whatsoever when you can train a better model to do that task with much smaller, much less compute, and less data, quite frankly. And so the architecture that we spend a lot of time researching internally is hierarchical models, right? And so you can imagine at the leaves of these hierarchies, you have these like tasks or subtasks that you're trying to solve, like in what you were talking about, perhaps like medical imaging or something like regional, right? Like you have all of these kind of submodels, which even if you add all of them together, right, the number of parameters will be orders of magnitude smaller than this massive model that tries to do everything. Right. And so I'm much more excited about that. And we spend a lot of time on that. And specifically, when you have such a model, like, of course, what you can do is you could just train these separate models and have some heuristic that decides which one to deploy. But what's more exciting for us internally is having it basically self-organize and start creating its own branches when it encounters stuff that it doesn't know how to do. So this is what I think is the future, and one of the big missing pieces that people aren't putting enough research into. Like I was saying before, they're always exploring bigger is better. Let's make this massive model that can do everything in the world. I don't I don't believe in that. And so I'm much more excited about hierarchical models that continually branch and add new kind of subtasks and tasks and grow the hierarchy essentially. That's my view. It probably is controversial, but we're trying to push forward on that.
Yeah, I
So
think I
from
don't
the
think it's a controversial one. Like, I think most of the models which we are seeing today also, like, it is getting compressed. Even 405 B model kind of performance can be achieved by 70 B now. So I think that's going to be happening. But again, I think like, my world is like, I don't want to know everyone. I just want to know the thing which I love most, and I just need it bottom up. That's it. That's a dot. I'm a guitarist, so I should be knowing about guitars. And that model, I don't care. That model like requires 4 H100s. Why do I need 4 H100s to run those models? It can be a small one,
Yeah,
but yeah,
exactly.
it's
And even because like a lot of what we do is we apply AIs to games, right? And a
yeah.
lot of people they try and using these large language models that have billions of parameters. I'm like, literally, you need a model with 100 weights to play this game. You know, like why are you like wasting all these resources on that? You know. So yeah, 100% agree.
How would that work in reality then? So essentially, what I'm getting from this conversation, again, trying to bring it back to the explain it to me like I'm five. What we're getting at here is when we're trying to create these like huge models that could solve for everything. It's to do that, to understand the universe is just a ridiculous task when realistically you're asking a specific question, and that specific question does not require knowing the answer to the universe. It requires knowing the answer to that specific question. So say for example, I love video games. I would be better speaking to a model that all it does, and maybe even go more niche than that. It's not just it only does video game AI, but it actually only does, I'm going to figure out what video game you should play next AI. Like it just keeps niching down. This makes sense to me, except for how does that still mean they have to connect together in some way? Is that like,
Yeah,
if that's the principle that I'm missing right now? So
that's a
for
fantastic question. That's a
okay.
fantastic, and it actually relates to something you mentioned like probably half an hour ago. I picked up on this, but you asked basically, why can't I just tell it something once and it knows how to do it, right?
Exactly.
And it's related to a few concepts. One of them is this idea of transfer learning, right? Where I learn how to do something in one task, I can transfer some of that knowledge into this other task. And this
Mm,
other concept of few shot learning, which is I only show it data a few times and it learns how to do it. So, for example, if I'm learning how to play Street Fighter, right, and I'm training like, let's say I'm learning from raw pixels, so I'm training like a convolutional neural net, for example, to understand how to process the pixels and extract features from it. Um, Now, this is also very useful if I want to play Mortal Kombat, right? Which is the same thing. I'm processing the same
mm,
inputs, right? I'm extracting features which are very much the same. And so, do I need to replicate this twice for both of my models? Probably not. They share um, the same basically like input processing, right? And so that's historically what people have tried to do is like, okay, like I'm just going to have this one thing that can process pixels. I'm going to apply it to 100 different games, right? I'm going to have like the same model essentially. It has some merits, but I think people have taken it too far and trying to use the same thing for like literally everything. I think what you can probably do is you can have something that's trained on a lot of different environments using some shared inputs, right? And then after it processes to a certain amount and it arrives at a certain part in the latent space. Sorry for using the technical terms. I'll explain it differently afterwards. Then you
mm.
can branch it out into like its different what we call policies, which is like learning how to act, right? And so I think, like you said, like there could be something that's shared across what we call environments, right? In Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, it's shared. Like I'm processing pixels the same way, but what I do is different. Maybe the game mechanics are different, and there's a lot of factors that kind of play into that. So yes, there's some merit in having something that's shared across environments, but there needs to be some kind of differentiation and kind of like how we start branching into different tasks, subtasks, so on and so forth.
Okay, I've got a case study, but I'm realizing we are 15 minutes into the show. So, listeners, again, likes, retweets. Kip always posts about like who's on the shows and stuff. So go find them, go follow them. I don't want to monopolize, so I'm gonna let the conversation brew. If you guys want me to provide a case study to wrap my head around this more, let me know. But
Yeah, yeah, no,
otherwise,
you go ahead,
yeah,
because
okay,
I'm gonna get into the weeds with all this latent space stuff. So yeah, bring us back
okay,
to the
perfect.
roll.
So I think one thing that fundamentally with AI, with tech, with remote work, with all the one of the biggest issues we have on a planet scale right now is social. And I don't mean virtually, I mean IRL social. Like literally everything we do, everything that we're sort of evolving into is making it more difficult, especially once you get removed from an office environment and you hit adulthood. It becomes increasingly difficult to have that IRL connection. This is something just from experience. I know I'm a fairly like social person as well, so the fact that I'm finding this difficult, I feel like this, it's more than a me issue. How would that work in the context of single niche understanding AI models? Because for me to find someone socially on the same level as me or someone that I want to interact with, my imagination is telling me, well, I'm going to need to know what movies they're into. I'm going to need to know all their different hobbies that are going to scale way, way beyond as an individual understanding or an AI that knows about gaming. It needs to know all of these different things at quite a large scale to understand me as a human being. And therefore, because for me, I'm not, although I have my niches and I have the things I like, I need those things to connect together. Otherwise, I'm still going to, like just because someone's into anime, like I've experienced this does not mean we're gonna get on IRL. Like we need to connect all of those dots. I'm also into Web3. I'm also into crypto. I'm also into AI. I'm also into tattoos and gaming and all of these things. So how would that work in a world where these AI models are just individual and they're just focusing on one of those things? Would you ever get to a point where they could all talk to each other and like figure out that whole piece of a human pie? Or would that be something that you do need those larger universe understanding, very, very complex models to do?
I love to kind of take that on a more solution design level versus, because the question which you have asked is like quite fantastic in those terms. So it can be solved from the solution perspective, because on the tech perspective it's already been solved. Okay.
Right.
But on the design perspective, it's going to be looking like, I don't know, like how many have like people like who are listening also, there is something called DAG based systems and all those systems where you build this entire small nodes together, they intercommunicate with each other to be, so the basic DAG systems are built to make systems more resilient towards like breakage, and also like making the system more robust. Now, if you look back in 2002 and before that, even after that, there was a system called mainframes, and then from mainframes we shifted to basically that monolithic systems to the microservices architecture in the solution design side. Okay, so the monolithic architecture is what where AI is today, like where we have GPT, and this is how I relate, because this is how my mind functions, because I'm a solution guy. Okay, so I look into that way. So monolithics are like, we have everything put into that, and if something goes wrong, we all just run here there to find the solution. Okay, for example, hallucination became one of the problems. Some issues will come up in the future, something will happen which is going to be a bottleneck for such kind of systems, and they cannot sustain for a very long time. Initially such systems do excel, the reason because everyone is vibing with it, and they think like, okay, it's gonna be. But as you start maintaining these systems, because we have to understand one thing, maintenance of IT infrastructure, we pay 80% cost of it, like 60 to 80% it goes into maintenance, rest goes in development, right? So I think that's something which we never talk about anywhere, because we have not seen the production and heavy production grade systems yet. So when we go into those directions, what we'll start seeing is like these monolithic applications, which I call is like GPTO or whatever, like the bigger models which requires bigger servers farms. We see smaller models getting spinned up. So smaller models are like what you have just mentioned is like, and the question is like, can they communicate with each other? And this is what Guppy has just talked about, and when he just mentioned about, is like there is a way where you can transform the knowledge to another model by saying, hey, you know what, I found these findings, can you proceed from this onward, right? So now what happens with that is like, you achieve the same level of accuracy without overkilling your systems, without having, because at a given point of time as a human, imagine your own use case, what you have just mentioned is like, you are a person who you want to meet to, and you want to know about them. So they might be in anime, they might be into, but there is certain traits and characters, there is not infinite characteristics of anyone individual, right? So there's a 10 character, there are categories. Anime is a category. Let's say I'm into horror movies, that's into a category. I'm in hockey, so it's a very specific categories, like, so there's nothing called infinity in categories, right? So there might be in the future there's an infinity category, but there is a categorization of these things. So and whenever there is a categorization happens, you can always build a system which can intercommunicate with each other, where the certain knowledge transfers, right? And this is what microservices architecture basically brought to the world, is like, where we used to run this I still remember, like, we in the early days we used to have around 30 GB of RAM, even 100 GBs of RAM in a single machine to run certain algorithms, right? But when the data sharding and all of these technique came into the picture, and algorithm became more powerful, we were able to break these systems down, and we were able to spread these messages to 10 different nodes, and those 10 different nodes were able to perform the same message, and able to like came to a single conclusion. The same happens with the message queue system, if you have like studied that. So message queue system works with the same methodology. So to summarize that, what you are saying is quite possible, and it is quite easy to do it. It's not going to be quite, yeah, it might be little tricky to, again, it becomes it will be like more of a service layer. So there is a service entity which will be targeting people like, okay, so I can provide you these traits, right? So you can own these traits from, or you can learn from these traits from us. Or let's say Jen is there, she is serving different traits, like, so we can, these service entity will get formed and they will start serving, not it, so that is what the beauty of AI and the modularity. It will allow everyone to economically participate by lowering the cost, and then also allows people to seamlessly pass the messages by like AI arena, and these guys are also like working upon is like, you have these leaflet systems where you just pass the message from one leaf to another leaf, and that start processing, and then you create a structure of a tree. On bottom of that you have all the information, right? So those things are quite possible, and it's not as hard as we think in as a normal human being, but on the technical side it can be solvable. It's very straightforward on the solution design side. I know I have overstretched it, but my solution thing came into the picture, but I'll pause here. Sorry for the stretch.
Yeah,
No,
well, we're reaching the end, I think. But
yeah.
I wish we weren't, because I want to go on and want to go into more detail and ask whether a DAG has a theory of mind, and whether it has a united personality or multiple personalities. Is it more octopus-like? Um, but yeah, we have to wrap up. So I just want to say thank you very much for coming in, and definitely everyone in the audience, please follow Spheron, please follow AI Arena and the guests. Please check out Kip. We're still airdropping, so there's still a chance to get a few tokens, I think, at this point. And yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much for having us, and congrats on the successful launch.
Oh, thanks.
Congratulations, guys, you guys are doing great. Cheers.
We're all
Stay
gonna
ready.
make it. Let's go.
Yes, exactly.
Wag me.
Exactly.
Bug me.